Why aren't patent challengers using PGRs more often?
Well, I think one of the reasons is just because of the timing that I mentioned earlier. So usually when you decide you want to file, say, an IPR petition, it's because you've been sued. I mean, something like at one point, the office said something on the order of over 80% of the IPRs that they saw had co-pending litigation. And so oftentimes you are either having discussions with the patent owner if you're going to, be the defendant / petitioner, or you've actually been sued. And, if that's what is triggering the filing of IPRs, for example, for that to happen with a PGR, a patent owner needs to get the patent issued, and then within 9 months has to then sue someone on that patent, or wave it in front of their face, say they infringe, basically trigger someone to take enough interest to then draft a PGR petition and get that filed all within 9 months of issuance of that. Now, the most likely scenario for that to happen is you're already in litigation maybe on a family member, and a child issues during the litigation, they want to add it to the case, you're already familiar with it, they assert that, and then all of a sudden you say, oh, we're in the PGR window, we're going to go ahead and file for the PGR. But unless you're tracking, there are certain industries where you may be tracking much more closely your competitors' patent applications, maybe in the pharma world, for example, or other industries, you may have knowledge of and want to get a PGR petition drafted even before issuance. That might happen sometimes, but overall, because of that 9-month window where you have to appreciate that it's a threat to you and pull something as massive as a petition like this together, it's just a difficult thing to do, and it's kind of unlikely. And then when you couple that with all the estoppel concerns and things that Megan talked about, then all of a sudden you usually decide, well, we're just going to take our time and file the IPR when we're ready, unless you have some really pressing concern about why you need to get it on file sooner.
Yeah, and to add, I think from a litigation perspective, it's much more palatable to go and file a declaratory judgment of non-infringement. And then if you get into that and decide you want to file your PGR, I feel like that's a move more clients are willing to or typically take, as opposed to filing a PGR just because of the estoppel implications. I feel like for some reason, I think clients are, especially sophisticated ones, are more comfortable in district courts in those settings than they are with the PGR. Also, there's just, I think the other barrier of PGRs is there's not a huge pool, as you mentioned, Jason. I mean, you're kind of dealing with some of the questions and standards, and I think there's a lot of unknowns just because there hasn't been a lot, and that makes people a little bit more or less comfortable with the proceeding, versus things that they know that you can get good decisions and good progress. But yeah, I think Jason, you're right. Absolutely, the 9-month is a big problem. But I also think that getting clients to sign on to them, given all the implications around them and the little bit of the unknown, is a little more challenging as well.
Yeah, and on the 9-month point, Jason, it sort of brought to my mind that I think PGRs, I think of PGRs as taking more time to prepare than IPRs because of the estoppel consequences. I think of sort of doing an even more scorched earth tactic for any prior art searching, and you just want to make sure that you have everything that much more in place. You want to make sure that you've really dug into written description, enablement, and all of your other defenses, and that you really understand them. I mean, you sort of want to do that anyway for an IPR, but for a PGR, it's that much more critical. So I think the PGRs do also just actually take more time to prepare if you're truly being sort of careful and deliberate about them. And this is maybe a little bit random, but I guess sort of thinking back to those slightly lower institution rates, the one thing that literally just came to my mind was the question of maybe some of those, maybe that's a slight reflection about sometimes sort of a protective PGR being filed. I think, Jason, you mentioned, the situation where you have a family of patents in litigation, and then one comes in issues and might be added to the case. And, sometimes you face the situation where you have a patent that's been issued within the last 9 months. It claims, it has a chain of priority to pre-AIA, but there's some questions about written description and enablement. And, if you file an IPR, you're just for the audience, you're not supposed to file, or, you shouldn't get instituted on an IPR if it was filed within 9 months of issuance, when you should have been filing a PGR when the patent was PGR eligible. So sometimes there's a question about whether, your patent is really PGR eligible. And so there are a few instances, rare, but, particularly I think if they're high stakes, where one might be filing an IPR and a PGR at the same time, just depending on, sort of what happens with respect to a call on the priority date of the patent and whether it's pre-AIA or post-AIA.